Today I'm going to start rubbing out the finish on this steel string guitar. I've sprayed the lacquer on it several weeks ago and it's now cured long enough that it's hard and I can sand repeatedly on the finish and buff it to a high shine. So in order to do that, I use a variety of sandpapers, starting with 320 grit and going up to 1000. And I use a backing pad just to give the paper some stiffness so that I can get the flat surfaces on the guitar to remain flat. I also use mineral spirits as a lubricant to keep the sandpaper from wearing out too fast. The mineral spirits are kind of nasty on my skin, so I wear gloves. And the process is pretty straightforward, but it's also very tedious. I start with the 320 grit paper, like I said, and wrap it around the pad. Squirt a little lubricant on it, and just start sanding on the finish. Mostly in a circular pattern. I sand for as long as it takes till I can see that there's no more shine left on the surface that I'm sanding. That means I've leveled the lacquer down to the point where all of the low spots are gone and I've got one continuous finish on the same plane. Okay, so the top looks pretty good after about 45 minutes of sanding. So now I'm going to move on to the back of the guitar. These are the two easiest surfaces to work with. The sides and the neck are much more time consuming. So I'm going to move on to the back now with my 320 grit paper. I pause from time to time and wipe the mineral spirits off of the finish. Once it dries, I can see, well, first off, all of the sanding scratches from the coarse paper, and that's what I want to see everywhere. And then occasionally, I will see a shiny spot, like right there. And that tells me that's a bit of a depression in the finish, and I need to sand more all around it to bring the higher surfaces down to that lower surface. When I'm done with the 320 grit paper, I don't want to see any shiny spots left on the surface. So I've spent countless hours sanding over the last few days. I've finally gotten everything on the guitar sanded up to 1000 grit, and now I'm ready to start the buffing process. You can see that at 1000 grit there's still a lot of scratches in the guitar, but they're a lot smaller than they were initially when I was doing the 320 grit. So the buffing process on these wheels is going to make those scratches smaller and smaller to the point where you can no longer see them. I'll use two different grits on the two different wheels. This one is kind of a medium cut and this one is a fine cut. So first I'll do the whole guitar. Well, first I'll do one whole panel with the medium, and then I'll move over to the fine. And once I've done that, I'll be able to see where I need to maybe touch up the sanding a little bit more.
Okay, let's take a quick look at this. So after just a few minutes of buffing, you can see that it's kind of shiny from a distance, but up close there are still thousands of little scratches that need to be buffed out. So I will be spending many hours on this guitar still, buffing out all those little scratches that take forever to go away. It's a very slow process, but coming along. Okay, after more buffing, I can see that I have far fewer scratches in the finish, which is good. But I do see a couple of tiny dents that probably won't show up in the camera, but there's one there, and there's one right here. So that means I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board, as it were, and start sanding again to kind of concentrate on those areas and remove a little bit more lacquer so I can get those dents out. Then I will proceed through all the grits of paper and back to the buffing wheel. However, before I do that, I'm going to do the initial buffing on the rest of the guitar, and that way I can find all of the spots that need attention and do all the sanding at once. Okay, I'm finally done buffing the guitar. I've lost track of the time that I spent doing it. It's been over a week since I first started, but of course I haven't worked on this exclusively. I like to only spend an hour or two at a time because I get tired of doing it. Anyway, I'm very happy with how the guitar turned out, and I'll show you some of it right now. So here's the back. I like to use the reflection of the overhead lights to show me if I've missed any spots or if there are any scratches or dents, and I'm really not seeing anything. The top looks good, but scratches are a lot easier to see on the back than they are on the top because the light color just seems to disguise them pretty well. So I have to be extra careful searching on the top of the instrument. And then moving up to the peg head. That looks quite good also. Not seeing any scratches anywhere. The dragon looks happy. And the sides look fine also, but it's really hard to show them in this light. So now that I'm done with the finish, I will remove the tape from the fretboard and I'll make a bridge for this guitar and get it glued on and do all the final fitting and setting up of the instrument, and it'll be done.